Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the We Are Not Lonely podcast. Today is going to be a little different from the last 1 month or so, because all I've been doing over the last month is just cribbing about my entire experience. Now, I was just sharing my experience about love and so on and so forth, but I do understand that it can get a little too much. That's all I've been on for the past month or so, and I want to do something different. I want to move on, and the past couple of days, this podcast is actually a bit late. It's coming out on Saturday, I hope, or maybe on Sunday, I don't know. We will see how it turns out. But essentially what happened is this podcast is late because I've been thinking of what else I can put out, and I've just been stewing and I've been resetting more or less. And I came across this particular topic, this particular video on Instagram, which I will try to play. Alright. Ginny the Yogi, I'm going to share his profile. I'm going to play the video that he's posted. So,
drugs and spirituality. So the reason these two things don't go together and it's considered lazy spiritual seeking is because when you use an external substance to induce some form of finding yourself or learning about yourself, it's not really you that's doing the work. The drug takes over and you're merely a vessel that is lying there and answers are coming to you. I might say that plant medicine has been used for traditions and is an age-old practice where people find answers. It doesn't matter if it's plant medicine or a drug, and by definition drugs are something chemical. Plant medicine is by nature. I'm not here to argue that. I'm not your father. Do what you want. I'm just saying do not use drugs in the name of spirituality, because if you are not able to sit down, just breathing air, sitting through that work, putting that hard work into yourself, because it's not easy to just sit down and meditate. A lot of uninformed spiritual seekers come at me and say that this is the way to do it, but I would consider them lazy and weak-minded because they're not able to sit down, sober mind and meditate. Because if you really believe in finding yourself and you putting in the hard work, you would do it yourself and not use an external substance, because it portrays utter weakness of mind and spirit.
okay, so this was the post, and it started this entire shitstorm, man. Like, I desperately, as soon as I heard this, I was like, yeah, I gotta share my opinion on this, because opinions are free, and they're just like assholes. Everybody's got one. Okay, so what happened was, as soon as I saw this, I was like, I need to respond to this, and I started typing out my response. It was way too long, so I copied it, and I was about to save it onto Evernote, but I didn't. It was an incredibly nuanced take. I like to believe that my take is always extremely nuanced, because I'm a very nuanced person and all that. But essentially what I said was along the lines, I'm just going to read out my response, right? I ended up deleting that first response by mistake. This was my second response. I just saved it onto Evernote and I shared it over there immediately, so I could just think and not react. My initial response was too damn long. First off, I love the absolute shitstorm in the comments. I'm gonna add to it smiley face. My short answer is that I agree. Why? Well, using substances is at best a shortcut. It can be done, but it's incredibly dangerous, especially if one doesn't have the necessary grounding or laid the preliminary groundwork, which most people don't do, by the way. And you can become bound to the medicine, and instead of finding yourself, you lose yourself to the medicine itself. In conclusion, do some asana, pranayama, meditate, and study the shastras instead. They'll do you a great deal more good in the long run. If you want to explore substances, go right ahead. Don't claim to be a spiritual master when all you've done is rely on crutches, though. And then I was like, yes, this is the short version. So that was my response to it, and people seem to like it. Our man actually ended up pinning the comment itself, so it felt kind of nice. I got that validation. But this did get me thinking, right? Because I've been through the journey, I've been like on a lot of things, and I'm not going to recommend, yeah, you can go ahead and use plant medicines if you want. It's totally cool. I'm not going to say that. Alright? I'm going to be very careful with my words because I know for a fact that people are going to be listening to this podcast hoping to understand something deep, right? And I don't want to mislead people by saying things are okay when they're not. Now, this actually got me thinking on how does one actually begin a spiritual journey? And I just went back to my productivity notes and they always said start with the end in mind. And what is the end goal of any and all activities from the shastras? Now, the end goal, according to shastras, is essentially moksha. I just realized that it would have been ideal to start off with a mantra. So let's do that and let's start from the beginning. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhanaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavid Vishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi Ishvaro Gururarthmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Sadashivasamarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Now, I've done these chants before, but I will just explain. The first one, Sahanavavatu, is just to ensure that there are no blockages in the passage of information and the transfer of information from me to you. The second one is a prayer to Lord Dakshinamurti, Ishvaro Gururarthmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. You're just praying to Dakshinamurti. And the third, and I chant this particularly because I'm going to be talking about some Vedanta related topics, and that's why I've chanted the third. It's about Sri Adi Shankaracharya. We're just praying to Adi Shankara. We're talking about the parampara of this knowledge. It started with Ishvara, Sadashiva Samarambam. It started with Sadashiva. In the middle, there was Adi Shankaracharya who revived the entire practice, and Asmadacharya, the current person who is teaching. In this case, I suppose that would be me. Most people do have an experience that draws them in. And most of the time, this experience might be kind of traumatic. It might be brought on by other states. It might be stressful and so on and so forth. And people say that this might be the Kundalini awakening. And I'm not going to comment on that in this particular thing because I need to do a lot more studies on that particular topic. All right. But what I am going to say is if you want a safe way to enter spirituality, spiritual life, I thought I'd prepare like a sort of a cheat sheet for it. And this is my attempt. I just want to say that any mistakes I make during this podcast are mine and mine alone. I take full responsibility for them and I apologize. I'm doing my best to keep this information as true as possible, and it is true according to my current knowledge at this time. I've studied the shastras. This is my attempt at distilling the knowledge that I have on the shastras. Alright, just to be clear, there will be a further more detailed podcast on this particular topic after I've done a deeper analysis. But for now, this is a good way to start. Alright? I just want to say that. A good way to start is always keeping the end in mind. It's always good to start with the end in mind. For example, this is something that I learned from productivity. Start with the end in mind. Write down your goals. So on and so forth. I do this all the time. So in any spiritual journey, the end goal is moksha. And obviously the question is going to be like, what is moksha? Now, for those of you who have not listened to the earlier podcasts where I've spoken about moksha and the rest, I highly suggest you go check it out. Alright? But just in case you don't have the time to listen to 2 hours of a podcast, I will try to summarize. Now, according to Vedanta, according to the Vedas, which is the Indian Bharatiya system of consciousness, there are 4 goals. There are 4 Purusharthas. Now, Purushartha is a Sanskrit word. It's a compound word made of 2 words, Purushaha and Artha. Purushaha in this particular context represents all of humanity, all of mankind. And Artha means goals. In this particular context, because Artha is going to come up again. And there are 4 Purusharthas. First of which, and is generally referred to in this order, is Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. Dharma is a form of invisible wealth. It's that Adrishtam, Adrishtam, luck, whatever you want to call it. It's a form of invisible wealth which can be accrued and earned. There's a particular way to do that too in the Vaidika way. Vaidika, Tantrika, whatever. The second Artha, which is basically the basic necessities of life. Food, clothing, shelter, roti, kapda, makan. Kama, which means, in a general way, it means pleasures, but in this particular context, it refers to the finer things in life. Better roti, better kapda, better makan. Not really necessary, but it feels nice. For example, instead of living in a capsule hotel and eating rice and rasam, you would be in a penthouse eating fried rice or biryani. You see the difference? One is basic necessities, one is nice to have. So that's the difference between Artha and Kama. Now, Dharma, Artha and Kama are generally referred to as preyaha. Everybody in life is pursuing this. Now, traditionally, what other Abrahamic religions speak about is they also kind of talk about accruing dharma in their own way. They talk about doing good deeds and building up a surplus of good deeds so that they can go to heaven and enjoy. Sanatana Dharma takes this particular concept a little further. The amount of punyam that you have is not only expended here, it's also used to take you to another loka after death, and it's also used when you're reincarnating in your next life, the amount of punya that you have carried over. Right? Those are topics that no one can really speak about with any authority, and since most of y'all, I'm not sure if any of y'all are Vedantins, I'm not going to talk about it. Alright? That can be done in we can explore those possibilities. Life after death is a concept that I've accepted it, but I'm not sure how many people have, so I will refrain from talking about it in this particular thing. Now, moksha, and this is the problem where I'm going to have to talk about life after death again because of this particular important thing. Moksha refers to two things. One is from the freedom from this endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. And there's this beautiful shloka from the Bhaja Govindam that talks about this. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jatare shayanam, iha samsari bahudustari. So what do? Kripaya pari pahi murari. The idea behind this is, for those of you who know Sanskrit and have been trained, can kind of piece this together. Bhaja Govindam is a song attributed to Sri Adi Shankaracharya. It's one of the texts studied in Advaita Vedanta. It's a beautiful text that holds a lot of philosophical meaning, and I'll talk about Advaita Vedanta a little further down the line. It has a lot of knowledge in it about who you really are, what your goal should be in life, and all of that. This particular verse that I just spoke about, Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, you will be born and you will die again and again and again. Punarapi maranam, punarapi jananam, punarapi janani jatare shayanam. You will keep being born again and again and again. Iha samsari bahudustari. This ocean of suffering is very painful. Samsara Sagara is generally how they refer to this world. It's called the ocean of suffering, of misery. It's a lot of pain. It's very difficult to get through. So what do? Please save me. Pahi murari. Kripaya pari pahi murari. Please save me, O great Lord. So when an individual is suppressed on all ends and he has no other way out, when he feels victimized by the world, when a jiva feels victimized by the world, he turns to Ishvara for assistance. He prays to Ishvara. This is the starting step. Finding God is a really good step to start. Of course, it is your choice whether or not to accept God. That's completely up to you. Advaita also, like Vedanta, the philosophies of India also allow for atheistic philosophies. It's your choice. You're not gonna go burn in a pit of hellfire for the rest of all time, for infinity, just because you refuse to believe. You are judged on the basis of your actions and your character, though. Just saying. So the idea is that you're born, you die, and you're reborn ad infinitum. forever until you break free of this cycle. And the idea is that is moksha. This idea is unique to Sanatana Dharma and all of the religions that come from Sanatana Dharma. People will not admit it, but originally Buddhism, Jainism, all, and even Sikhism, to be honest, all originated from Sanatana Dharma, from the Vedas. There's numerous references to the deities, to the practices from Sanatana Dharma. Alright, I'm just putting that out there. In every other culture, in every other religion, most of which are Abrahamic religions, you are born once, you die, there is judgment day. Depending on how you've lived, you're either cast into heaven forever or into hell forever. That's the difference between Sanatana Dharma and the Abrahamic religions. One life versus multiple lives where you're constantly tested. You're thrown into this earth, which is it's basically a test ground, and you're given infinite freedom. And there are caveats depending on you do things, and depending on what you do now, your future is improved. But the catch-22 is your actions right now depend on your past actions. You are a creature of habit, and to break free from this cycle, it takes immense effort. And a lot of people say it's impossible. A lot of people say it's so difficult, man. It's so difficult to do japa, to do any sort of a spiritual activity. And I agree, dude. Like it's difficult, but you have to do it. What is the choice? Do you want to be reborn and die ad infinitum? That's your choice. Okay, so moksha, there are two ways of looking at moksha. One is freedom from preyaha, from dharma, artha, kama. You are free from those three. The other is freedom from the eternal cycle of birth and death and rebirth. This is an important topic, and I would advise you to listen to this as many times as you can to understand this. You can choose to accept or not to accept, that's your choice, but this is the basic understanding. Before everything else hinges on this particular thing. You're infinite. Life continues until you break free of that infinity symbol, no? That's a metaphor for your life. You get stuck in that particular loop forever unless you break free, and that's moksha. So the question is, how does one begin to get into such activities? How does one begin? The thing is, you need that mindset, all right? And generally speaking, people will only look to God when they are in immense trouble, and it seems kind of poetic, and at the same time seems very sadistic to suggest that the only reason that God puts sufferings in our life is to remind us of Him, to push us towards Him. But that's sort of like the truth of life, man. When things are going well, when there are ways to get out of the problems that you're in, you never go to God. It's only when things seem hopeless that most people, even believers, turn to God. But I'm not here to chastise y'all. I'm here to give you ways that y'all can attempt to earn punyam and eventually break free of this entire cycle of life and birth, rebirth, and death. Samsara Sagara. There are a lot of practices that are subscribed in Sanatana Dharma. Now, if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, he talks about a bunch of yagnas. He talks about a bunch of things that you can do. And it's vast. The amount of actions that are prescribed as acts of devotion, of acts that can accrue punyam, that increases the possibility that you have God's grace, are infinite. In fact, Krishna also mentions that even if you offer a leaf unto me, I will accept it with devotion. If you offer a tulasi leaf or water or both, if you offer even that with devotion unto me, I will accept it. But that's the point. You have to offer with devotion, wholeheartedness, not cheaping out. The other thing is, this is an important point that you have to understand. Most people perform every action hoping for a result. They always perform actions with the hope of achieving a certain result. And Of course, you have to study the Bhagavad Gita to get the true essence of what I'm saying, but you have to perform actions without being attached to the consequences. And that's something I've been learning a lot more. That this is the message that has probably been drilled into my head over the last month. Perform actions without focusing on the consequences. Be unattached. And that's one of the really good ways. Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma paleshu kadachana. Perform karma, don't look at the fruit. So the thing is, when you perform karma, the starting point is performing good actions. And we will talk about what kind of actions you can perform. Perform good actions with Ishwararpana Buddhi and Prasada Buddhi. That is, you dedicate everything you do to God, and whatever you receive, you don't expect anything, but whatever you receive, you take it as prasadam. This is a good mindset to have for all of life. And this is one of the fundamental, this is a starting point. This is a really good starting point. Because karma will eventually, performing good karma will lead you to gain the adhikaram, the right to do karma yoga, and eventually that will lead you to jnana yoga and jnanam. That will lead you to knowledge. So perform good actions, eventually that will lead you to knowledge. That's the base. But again, like I said, catch 22. You are caught in this endless loop of past actions deciding your future actions and future actions being decided by the past actions. How do you break free? And this is why they say that being born in the right environment, being born, all of these hidden factors that come into play when you're born in life. That's why they're given so much importance. That's what punyam is. Being born in the right family with the right environment that allows you to pursue the right things. That's one of the greatest gifts that you can be born with. More on that later, maybe in another podcast. Essentially, there are a lot of things that you can do. Now, I'm going to have to add this particular caveat. This is the Kali Yuga. People consider this the age of darkness, the age of ignorance. It's an evil age where everybody is just focused on money, on material wealth, on transactions, on benefits that they can receive. Which is why even when people go to a temple, they are primarily trying to bribe God. Hey Bhagwan, I will see I've been breaking coconut every day for the past 1 month. Please let me pass my exam. This has happened. I've seen people do this. People go to temples on the eve of an exam, and people used to ask me back when I was in college. I would actually wear a namam every day. A namam is a tilak. It's a marking on the forehead that represents certain things. One is your devotion to God, as well as which particular God you're affiliated with. Generally, kumkuma applied in certain ways represents Vishnu. Sometimes chandana represents Vishnu again. In certain ways, like bhasma generally represents Shiva. So that's an entire topic by itself. Let's not go there. But I used to wear a tilak, and people would ask me, hey, what? Why are you going to temple? Only now you'll go to temple. Only when exams come around, you'll go to the temple, is it? And they would laugh. But I would laugh knowing that, dude, I've been wearing this every day for the past 3 years. You just haven't noticed it. I've gone on a slight tangent. I apologize. So, okay. Let me start right at the top with the best. Because in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna talks about the best way to perform. Yagna is like a spiritual action, and Yagnosmi aham japaha. He says, among all of the spiritual practices, the best spiritual practice would be the chanting of mantras, mantra japa. The caveat with this is that it's slightly complicated depending on which tradition that you follow. And there's a process where you need to be initiated into this particular process. You can't just go online and find a mantra and start chanting it. You will not receive full benefits. It needs to be given to you. You need to receive the diksha, they call it, by a competent individual, a competent guru. Without that, there's no point. Now, there are certain mantras that anyone can chant, and there are certain things that you can also do, like number one, you have the Ashtakshara mantra, which is Om Namo Narayanaya. and you have the Panchakshara mantra, which is Om Namah Shivaya, which can be chanted by pretty much everybody. You don't need to be initiated. Eventually, it will lead you onto the right path. I wouldn't recommend just chanting Om, because chanting just Om it's very powerful, no doubt. It will help. Chanting Om is powerful. It's better to get grounded. I would recommend it. If you want to understand why, I would suggest you search about Rajashri Nandi. He explains this particular topic in a great deal more detail. So, one of the best ways to accrue punyam, to do chitta shuddhi and the rest, for those who are a little higher than, who have their mind set on higher things than just accruing punyam, you start off with mantra japa. This is the highest of the high. You can do that. Alright? And the idea is that while you're chanting, there are certain specific procedures. You're supposed to fix your mind onto a particular object. Don't let it fly away. And the mantra helps you focus. You just have to focus your mind on the mantra, the meaning of the mantra, maybe a particular image of the god that you're worshipping as well. And that is essentially one step away from dhyanam. You're at dharana, which is a state of one-pointed focus, intense one-pointed focus. And eventually that will lead you to dhyana, and that will lead you to samadhi. That's the idea. Dharana, dhyana, samadhi. These are the last 3 steps of Ashtanga Yoga, which is what I'm going to get into next. Mantra japa, like I said, there are these 2 mantras that you can chant, the Ashtakshara, the Panchakshara. One is dedicated to Vishnu, one is dedicated to Shiva. And these are not really limited to anybody. Anyone can chant these mantras, it will do you good. There's no negatives associated with these 2. The other one that I would also mention is the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Alright, and the reason that this has actually been given out to all of humanity to be chanted by this one particular, I think it was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I'm not quite sure. Alright, it's chanted particularly by the ISKCON Sampradaya, that is the Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sampradaya. Basically, the mantra goes Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is extremely powerful. And I will talk about why immediately after this. Now, I've spoken about how I earlier spoke about how this is the Kali Yuga, and this is the age of darkness where a lot of things, it's very difficult for people to focus their mind on God. But at the same time, it is one of the most blessed, because one can achieve great punyam just by chanting the name of the Lord. And that's the beautiful part of it. Just by chanting the name of the Lord, you gain so much punyam. It's mostly because, one, people these days are not really focused on God. There's this movement towards atheism, towards scientific thinking, which is completely understandable. But I've spoken about how Purusha Buddhi Dosha, human intellect, is limited. And if you want to know the unlimited, if you want to know the infinite, you have to look to the infinite itself. And the idea is that the shastras, the Vedas, were revealed to the sages by the infinite being himself. And that's the point that you have to accept, or you can choose to reject, and that's where you become Astika or Nastika. Alright? These are the spiritual practices that you can do to get to that particular state of oneness with this divine being. Alright? So Nama Japa is a powerful method that you can do, and this particular mantra, this Maha Mantra, is called the Maha Mantra because in the Vishnu Sahasranamam, now I'm just throwing a bunch of really complex topics out there and hoping that you will understand. Vishnu Sahasranamam it's a chant that was revealed in the Mahabharata by Bhishmacharya to Yudhishthira. It's a profound spiritual practice. It's essentially chanting the 1,000 names of the Lord. And I just mentioned a few seconds back that chanting the name of the Lord in the Kali Yuga is one of the greatest spiritual practices because it brings you immense amount of punyam. So see how everything ties together. Now, Sahasranama is 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu. Vishnu Sahasranama means 1000 names of Lord Vishnu. Now, obviously, everybody's going to be like, bro, 1000 names, too much. What to do? Is there a shortcut? Incidentally, Sri Parvati, that is the wife of Lord Shiva, also had the same question. She's like, hey Bhagwan, this is very long. Is there a shortcut to this? And Lord Shiva, the greatest devotee of Vishnu, says, yes, there is. And he says, and he chants this particular shloka. Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane. And the chant continues. This is towards the end of the Vishnu Sahasranamam. This is part of the Vishnu Sahasranamam itself. So what it essentially says is, Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane. The name Ram, Shri Rama Nama, has the entire punyam. It gives you the same benefit as chanting the entire Sahasranamam. So, if you're lazy, just chant Ram, Ram, Ram. That's it. But very few people will be able to do even this much. I guarantee it. Because of the Kali Yuga. It's so difficult to stay on track and focused on and keep your mind on God. But when you do, just remember, chant the name Ram and you will get a great deal of param. So that's the second thing. I spoke about how you can do mantra japa. For those of you who haven't been initiated, I've given you 3 mantras that anyone can chant. There are a few prerequisites to that. Make sure your body, mind and soul are clean. You can wash yourself before the mantra. You can sip water 3 times before you start. You have to chant you have to do the Achamanam. Sit facing the east and start chanting these mantras. Close your eyes, focus on God and start chanting these mantras. This is the start. This is a really good start. You're not willing to do that? Okay, fine. Every once in a while, do Nama Japa. Chant the name of the Lord. And incidentally, this is really cool. If you notice, if you've come down to India and if you've spent any amount of time studying the shastras or studying yoga, which is mostly what the Westerners do in India, you will notice that a lot of people have the name of God itself. There are thousands of names of God. Shiva has 1,000 names. Vishnu has 1,000 names. Devi has 1,000 names. So most people, most kids in India have the name of a god, a certain god. I know friends who are named Vishnu. I have at least 2 to 3 friends named Vishnu. My nephew, part of his name is Ram. So people name their kids after the Lord because remember this, every time they're calling out to their kid, they're getting that punya. And there's a story in the shastras as well, I think in one of the Puranas, where this one particular individual is calling out to his son. And this guy has lived a very bad life. He's lived a horrible life. He's abandoned his wife, he's running after a prostitute his entire thing, he spends all his money on this prostitute, and he's left destitute, helpless. But his son's name is Narayana, and as he lays dying, he calls out to his son lovingly, Narayana, Narayana, Narayana. And the people, Yamas, the god of death, has sent his servants to collect this person's soul and take it down. Not soul, but let's not get into the specifics. He was supposed to go down to Naraka because he spent a very sinful life. All of his sins have been forgiven because at the time of his death, he's called out to the Lord. And the Dwarapalaka of Vishnu come down, take this guy, take him all the way to Vaikuntha instead of going to hell. Because he had the good fortune of calling his son, whose name happened to be Narayana, on his deathbed. This is the power of a name. Remember, see how many stories there are that just tell you the importance of this particular word. Now the word Ram, the reason why I said it's so powerful is it goes back to this particular incarnation of Sri Vishnu onto this particular planet. He comes down and his avatar is Sri Ram, and his father Dasharatha is wondering, what can I name my son? And I believe it was sage Vashishta, Rishi Vashishta, who looks at this particular form is going to be a very powerful form. He's going to incarnate with the full power of God. So what do? We need a name worthy of this particular being. So he takes the Bijaksharas of two powerful mantras. Now, I spoke about how Om Namah Shivaya and Om Namo Narayanaya, right? So he takes Ra from Om Namo Narayanaya, because if you remove Ra from Om Namo Narayanaya, it becomes Om Namo Nayana, which is nothing. And he takes Ma from Om Namah Shivaya, because if you remove Ma from Om Namah Shivaya, it becomes Om Na Shivaya. So he takes these two words, these two letters, these two syllables from two powerful mantras, removing which would render the mantras worthless, and he puts them together and it becomes Rama. That is, and you see how this particular word, just everywhere you go, Sahasranama Tattulyam Ramanama Varanani. It's there. All of these Easter eggs are there in all of the Shastras. And once upon a time, people would sit and read the Shastras. They would chant the Shastras together as a family. They would have bhajan kirtan where they chant Hanuman Chalisa. The Ramayana would be read. The Bhagavad Gita would be sung. But like I said, this is the Kali Yuga and all of those practices are being lost. So you have to come to this particular podcast. You have to come to the We Are Not Lonely podcast and listen to me crack really stupid jokes and then give you this kind of information. Because it's the Kali Yuga. See how things are tying together. Alright. So this is a good way to start. Nama japa, mantra japa. Just chanting the Lord's name. Devotion is useful at this point. Call with love, which is why people give that name to their children, because they will call their children with love most of the time. Sometimes they'll call with irritation also. I've seen it happen because my youngest cousin is very annoying sometimes, and his parents mostly call his name out of irritation, but they're being called. That's the important part. Alright, so these are two particular practices that you can do that will really help. The other things that can help are listening to bhajans. Now, most of the bhajans, there are a bunch of stotras, stutis, that just praise God. Just listening to them with intent devotion, with full focus, will help you. For example, you listen to the Hanuman Chalisa, you listen to the Vishnu Sahasranamam, you listen to Bhaja Govindam, you listen to the Shiva Tandava Stotram, you listen to the Kala Bhairava Ashtakam. All of these things will help you. You choose one and you listen to that. That's more than enough. That will help you progress to a particular point. After that, you'll have to start taking more direct action. But passively itself, you are able to accrue punyam. That is the point I'm trying to make. If you listen to bhajans with full devotion, it will help you progress. Perform good actions, it will help you progress. And this is really important. Associate with good people. The reason that satsanga is so important is that the quality of your friendship, of your circle, determines your quality. If you spend time with good people who have noble intentions, who do good deeds, you will become like them. If you spend time with bad people, you'll end up like them. So spend time with good people talking about good things like the Lord, philosophy, etc. That's another thing that you can do. Satsanga. Spend time in the company of good people, of saintly people, and you will become like them. Accept their wisdom, treat them with respect, so on, so forth. That's another. Okay. Now, I'm going to talk about Ashtanga Yoga because I just realized recently over the past couple of months that a lot of people come to India to study yoga. They go to Rishikesh to study Hatha Yoga. Yeah, like up north they study Hatha Yoga. They come down to Mysore to study Ashtanga, Mysore style. Now there are a lot, but I'm just going to touch on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali Yoga Sutra, where he talks about Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga, it literally refers to 8 limbs, but what most people practice is just asana. That's not the right way to go about it. Most people don't even know that yoga is a spiritual practice that developed in India. They don't even know that it has roots in this particular subcontinent, that it originated with Bharat, that it was given by Lord Shiva to the sages so that they can prevent their bodies from wasting away while they were doing intense tapas. They don't even know that there are preliminary steps before they start yoga itself, before they start the practice of asana, which is what yoga has been reduced to, a series of physical jerks. And once in a while they say focus on your breath. Maybe they'll do nadi shodhana, purification, by doing anulom vilom. This is max that most people know. But the point of yoga is not just this. The end goal of yoga is samadhi, which is another way of saying it's again pointing to moksha again. There are a lot of views on this particular topic. People say, oh no, like that's not the way. And there are a lot of arguments, debates between different philosophies as to what the ideal way to reach the end is. But if you're starting out on this particular practice, Ashtanga Yoga is as good as any. Ashtanga Yoga paired with the rest of the things that I've mentioned, mantra japa, nama japa, listening to bhajans, performing bhajans, kirtans, calling out to the Lord in love, performing acts of service without expecting anything in return, feeding animals, performing charity, all of these are really good activities that will help you. But right now we're talking about Ashtanga Yoga. There are two preliminaries. There's yama, niyama, and then you have the practice of asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Pratyahara is where you start, after asana pranayama, you start withdrawing. Pratyahara is literally withdrawal. You withdraw from the senses. You withdraw from the outside, you go inside. Yeah. There are certain things that you can do, like, you start fasting at this point so that you learn to control your mind and the amount it's focused on hunger and all that. For example, right now I'm actually fasting. It's Ekadashi. The only thing that I've broken my fast actually. A couple of, I think by around 5 o'clock. I was just like, I could have actually, today was not that bad. I could have gone the entire day without eating anything. I drink water the entire day. I don't have anything before sunrise. That's not how I do things. That's not how the shastras do things. The last meal I had was last night. And technically, Yatha Shakti, in the future, I will continue my fast until sunset. We shall see. This is an Ekadashi Vrata. The Vrata is like a fast. It's the decision I've taken. I said I will abstain from rice grains for sure. That's how I started this Vrata. Eventually, it became just fruits. I started having one meal a day after sunset because I do a lot of physical activities. I practice martial arts. I do lifting now. And I've also started yoga, which I'm going to talk about in a video by itself. Ashtanga Yoga. I practice asana and pranayama and meditation. I'm just saying dhyana. So Ashtanga Yoga starts with yama niyama. There's a lot of pre-disciplines. You have to discipline yourself. And then you start the practice of asana, which is all the series of Surya Namaskar, the sitting postures, the standing postures, the stretching postures, etc., etc. Then you do pranayama, which is control of prana. This is a preparatory step for meditation. Once you reach meditation, all of this is a preparatory step to get to meditation, and you're using dhyana, pranayama, like all the way. There are steps to get to meditation as well. Dharana, after asana, pranayama. This is the pranayama is the fourth step. The fifth is pratyahara. Sixth is dharana, one-pointed focus. Seventh is dhyana. And dhyana is not the end goal. It is samadhi. Samadhi is the end goal. Keep your eyes on the end goal. Right? Because that's where you want to go. That's where your goal is. You want moksha. That's what all of this effort was for. Don't lose track of the end goal. And that's what I always want to focus on. The end goal is liberation. Not everybody's ready for that. So if you're just going to play around in the first three, go ahead. Just earn punyam and stay there. But the end goal is not punyam. The end goal is moksha. Okay? So I'll just touch upon what Advaita Vedanta says, because that's kind of relevant, because that's the system that I practice and follow. There's just three phases. There's Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. Shravanam is listening to a teacher. Mananam is contemplating on what you've learned. Nididhyasana is like a guided meditation session where you contemplate on particular verses. Shravanam is listening, you accept. Mananam is you digest by thinking over it, you arrange it in your own words, you do your revision. Nididhyasanam is contemplating, internalizing, so on and so forth. What do you have to do Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam of? Essentially, there are Prasthanatrayam. There is the Bhagavad Gita, there are the Upanishads, 12 Upanishads, and you study the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, as well as finally the Brahma Sutra Bhashyam. These are the 3 things that you have to study. And this will take a lifetime. You have to continue this particular study for a lifetime. The entire message in this can be reduced, but the logic behind how to get there, it's vast. Which is why you keep doing this forever and ever and ever, so that it becomes an internalized part of you. Jnanam is the final path, the final destination. I'm not going to talk about that any more than this. But in the end, it's ideal that you use the path of Jnanam. Everything leads there. I think I will end on this particular note. I've given you a great deal of information. You can digest it. This is a really good podcast. I didn't expect it to come out this well. Honestly, I just went on my runs. I just had a bunch of points. Just one letter, one word answers, things to get to. One word, not one letter. So we've gotten to the end of this particular podcast, and I'm going to end with a prayer before I do my goodbyes. Om Purnamatah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Thank you everybody for joining us on this particular podcast of the We, on this particular episode of the We Are Not Lonely podcast. I appreciate your time. We will be coming up with more podcasts like this. I've entered into more of a spiritual bend recently, and I think that's going to continue. This year is going to be brilliant for sadhana. Thank you everybody, and I will see you again in the next episode. Episode 40. I can't believe this is episode 39. It's intense. Thank you everybody. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao. Punarmilam. I'll see you again.